4 more wide receivers come off the board in the second half of the first ever Renner Ranks mock draft. It's picks 17 through 32. Let's get it.
This is Renner Ranks, the ultimate NFL ranking show. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Into today's episode of Renner Ranks, your go-to daily ranks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And a special thank you to all the everydayers out there for making Renner Ranks your first listen of the day. Don't forget, like, subscribe, follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. And of course, I am the host, Mike Renner, NFL draft analyst over at The Messenger. And this podcast is brought to you by Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code all lowercase LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. If you missed yesterday's episode, we did picks 1 through 16 of the first ever Renner Ranks mock draft, and now we're on to pick 17 through 32. The fireworks, they are aplenty. It's a good draft class, and that means that in the second half, there's still some players that I think could be special players at the next level, but let's get into it. 17, Cincinnati Bengals. I had this mock draft prepped prior to Monday Night Football, and I had it prepped, unfortunately to say, Bengals fans, with the Bengals anticipating them losing that game. They pulled out the win, so they're picking 17th, and I have them still getting a guy in Florida State wide receiver Keon Coleman that would be the perfect replacement for T. Higgins. A very similar skill set, right? He's 6'4", 215 pounds, absurdly good ball skills. For my money, the best ball skills in this draft class. Over the past 2 seasons, only 4 drops on 112 catchable passes. Now, he lacks probably the vertical speed to be a true deep threat, but it's not like T. Higgins was a burner in and of his own right? He's going to be a back shoulder king. He's going to be that guy hauling in the tough contested catches for Joe Burrow. If Joe Burrow can just put it on his leverage, Keon Coleman's coming down with it every time. So a perfect fit if they do end up losing T. Higgins in free agency. And after one receiver comes off the board at pick 17, pick 18, I have the Arizona Cardinals. This was the trade they got from the Houston Texans last year in that Will Anderson trade. I have them going Brian Thomas, LSU wide receiver, another one. And this one's a guy I've been sticking my neck out for a while. If you flip on his tape, the 6'4", 205-pound wide receiver is an absolute burner. A similar skill set to a guy like Christian Watkins coming out of North Dakota State in that you don't see guys at his height. Again, 6'4" is tall wide receiver. 6'4" as tall as Keon Coleman. He's probably going to run maybe 0.2 of a second faster in the 40 than Keon Coleman does. He's one of the fastest wide receivers in the college football at top speed. 18 yards per reception this year. His passer rating when targeted, a ridiculous 152.7. Because on 74 targets, he caught 60 of those for 1,079 yards and 15 scores. Massive breakout year for him. And I think if you're the Arizona Cardinals, and now it's a little bit crazy here. I did go a little bit crazy. But if you had Marvin Harrison Jr. and Brian Thomas to an offense with Kyler Murray, and then you have Michael Wilson and Trey McBride as kind of your inside possession type of wide receivers, and those 2 burners on the outside, you're telling me that offense wouldn't be an absolute house? It would be a house. That would be a difficult offense to stop. That would be a very difficult offense to stop. And it would give Kyler Murray really no excuse to be a high-end NFL quarterback that he kind of showed prior to, the wheels falling off back in, what was that, the 2021 season? Man, not even that long ago when he was the MVP candidate before the Packers took him to town, before Rasul Douglas happened to him. All right, 19 here. Atlanta Falcons. I have them going Illinois defensive tackle Jerzon Johnny Newton. DT1 for me in this draft class, like a pure one-to-one sort of fit for if Grady Jarrett doesn't come back fully healthy from his ACL tear. Now, obviously, he was kind of on the decline prior to that, on the wrong side of 30 at this point. Not necessarily going to be expecting him to come back being the same guy. So John Newton's your kind of insurance plan here. And Newton's a heck of a prospect in his own right. 44 pressures this past year. Really, at 6'2", 295, a little undersized, not going to be everyone's cup of tea. But again, that's kind of what the boat Grady Jarrett was in. So if you're willing to make Grady Jarrett, the face of your franchise on the defensive line there, Johnny Newton very much could fill that role once he hangs it up. So I think it's a good fit. On to number 20, Green Bay Packers now on the clock. I have them going Iowa cornerback Cooper DeJean. It's a great wide receiver class, and I do still think they could use like a true number one in that offense. But however, knowing the Packers, they're never going to draft a wide receiver. Of their past 13 first rounders, only one's been on the offense side of the ball, and it was Jordan Love. So when your hit rate's that good, you would think you'd probably try to go offense a little more at this point. But no, they continually go defense. And for me, the biggest need is just anywhere in the secondary at this point. Even if Eric Stokes does come back healthy, I don't think you're relying on him at this point. And Cooper DeJean's a guy who's versatile enough, 6'1", 207 pounds, has played in the slot before, has played on the outside. I think with his skill set, he's either a safety or slot cornerback there. Because for as good as Keyshawn Nixon is as a returner, he's not a great tackler when asked to play in the box. A big issue in run defense. Cooper DeJean, I think, would fix that were he to don a Packers jersey next year. All right, 21, Minnesota Vikings. Here it gets interesting. I have them going LSU quarterback Jayden Daniels. And after the year he put up here, I fully expect him to be a first rounder. Now, I don't think he's the most accurate, despite his numbers being, pretty darn good. Because as we just saw with Malik Neighbors, where he went number 5 overall, with where Brian Thomas Jr. went 18th overall, that he's dealing with a little bit different animal there in terms of talent in that offense than a lot of other guys across country, than literally anyone else across the country, because those guys made his stats look a lot better. But he also is a heck of an athlete. Jayden Daniels can really move, can really get out in the run. Like, he will be an impact rushing threat in your offense. And I love the poise from the pocket that he showed this year. The year-on-year improvements in that regard, played a lot better under pressure than at any point in his career. And there's a lot to like there. And you see the year-on-year progression from him. And for a team in the Minnesota Vikings who, you've seen Kevin O'Connell be able to work with a mobile quarterback, a more mobile quarterback than Kirk Cousins, who's probably the least mobile quarterback in the NFL right now. But one of the more mobile ones in Josh Dobbs, and still put together, manufacture offense in different ways for him than he ever did for Kirk Cousins. Jayden Daniels is a much more talented quarterback than Josh Dobbs. There is a lot more you can put on his plate in terms of downfield passing that you really can't with Josh Dobbs. And so you give him the weapons, we're talking about the weapons he had at LSU. The weapons he's going to have with the Minnesota Vikings are going to be pretty darn good as well. So, and Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison. So yeah, Jayden Daniels, I would love that fit for him. Does he make it to this point at this juncture? That's a TBD. Again, I said I'm higher on Knicks, but I think they are both going to go in the first round when all is said and done. All right, number 22, Indianapolis Colts. I have them going Alabama cornerback Kool-Aid McKinstry. And now I've kind of cooled on this cornerback class. To me, I think Nate Wiggins is the one who's like a pure high-end type of prospect. I think now Kool-Aid, Cooper DeJean, surefire first rounders in my opinion. But when the rest of this class is stacked at other valuable positions, like all the edge rushers, wide receivers, and offensive tackles we've seen come off the board already, I think you're going to give deference to those positions, especially with how teams are scheming their defenses now, kind of de-emphasizing a lot of positions in the secondary, right? Or turning them into different types of players. With the way a lot of teams scheme their defense now, they're asking them to be more tacklers than they are asking them to be pure man-match type of players. And now I love Kool-Aid McKinstry and man-match. I think he's one of the best skill sets in this class, or most skilled corners in this class. But he's not necessarily the high-end athlete that's going to make up ground, that's going to, once beat, be able to recover in a quick manner. And now, again, that's something that Chris Ballard has said he covets, but also he has the length and the skill set that it's almost beggars can't be choosers at this point if you're the Indianapolis Colts. You need a corner. Your corner group is dangerously thin. A lot of youth in that corner group, and I know they've gotten around it. But I do think Kool-Aid McKinstry really offers something different than anyone else they have there in that unit. All right, on to number 23, the Pittsburgh Steelers. This one is unique, I'll say. And I'll say it's Georgia offensive tackle Amarius Mims. So last year, you go Georgia offensive tackle Broderick Jones. Early returns, solid, right? He's been at least a man already in the running game. Amarius Mims is a grown man in his own right. 6'7", 340 pounds. The problem is he has not stayed healthy this year. Multiple injuries, got hurt in the conference championship game against Alabama Yet again, only played 11 snaps in that game. So for his career, only 803 snaps. Not a single full season in his 3 years of college football. The traits are absolutely off the charts, though, at 6'7", 340. He moves so well. And if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers and how, they've ran offense, no matter who it's been, offensive coordinator-wise, they've wanted an offensive line that can impose their will on the opposition. This is going to help you impose your will because Chukwuma Okorafor and Dan Moore Jr., they're not cutting it, right? They've not cut it at any point, truly, in their NFL careers there for the Pittsburgh Steelers. They've not been as good as you need to be to really be a high-end offense there in Pittsburgh. And so you got to take a play at this point. And Amarius Mims, if he were to have stayed fully healthy all season long, I don't think he would have made it to this point in the draft. And now maybe that means he comes back to Georgia. But that also might mean you're getting a steal of a pick in Amarius Mims. And before we get to pick 24 here, today's podcast is brought to you by Skylight. Are you looking for a meaningful gift this holiday season that your loved ones will actually use? Most holiday gifts can be boring, like socks, slippers, candles, and robes. And after one-time use, you may never use them again. But the Skylight digital picture frame is different. It is a touchscreen photo frame you can send photos to straight from your phone, and they appear in seconds. You can even preload photos before the box is even open. So when it's unwrapped and plugged in, your most treasured memories will appear. It's the perfect gift for everyone, grandparents, new parents, your spouse, anyone in your life that you care about. As a special limited time offer for our listeners, get $15 off your purchase of a Skylight frame when you go to skylightframe.com/lockedon. To get 15% off your purchase, go to skylightframe.com/lockedon, skylightframe.com/lockedon. Pick 24, Houston Texans now on the clock. This is the pick that they traded, that the Cleveland Browns traded them in the Deshaun Watson trade that's still reaping dividends for the Houston Texans. And I have them going Texas A&M linebacker Edgerrin Cooper. And now, is it a reach? Is it a first-round linebacker? Too much? If you watch Edgerrin Cooper's tape this year, he has what the first-round linebackers have. He has the frame at 6'3", 230. He is long as can be for a linebacker, high-cut dude. He has the burst, athleticism, and that so far this season, season's over. This season, he had the production as well, man. Like he was making plays in the pass game, in the running game. There was really a lot to like on his tape. It was a massive breakout for him in his fourth season there at Texas A&M. And if you're DeMeco Ryans, you're looking around this defense and you're saying, where were the 49ers? Where was the team I used to coach? Where were they different? Not too dissimilar in the secondary right now. You have some pieces there on the defensive line. No one really at this point that I think can help you replicate that are really high-end pass rushers this late in the draft, obviously, that I think can get to that point. But you can get a linebacker that obviously not going to be Fred Warner. No one is going to be that. I mean, he can be like a Dre Greenlaw. He could be of that ilk in the skill set that Edgerrin Cooper brings to the table. So I really like what I've seen from Blake Cashman there. He could be your weak side linebacker, Edgerrin Cooper, your middle linebacker, and you got two dudes that can fly sideline to sideline. So maybe there are other bigger positions of need for the Houston Texans going forward, but it's definitely one that I think would impact in DeMeco Ryans' defense. All right, number 25, Kansas City Chiefs on the clock. I have them going Adonai Mitchell, the Texas wide receiver. This guy needs more hype, man. He has unique movement skills for a wide receiver that is 6'4", 196 pounds. He's just loose as can be, man. He has crafty route running ability that I think is going to play in the Kansas City Chiefs. And what I love, even more so than that route running ability, his hands, man. He goes up, high points football, is not going to be a hanging Patrick Mahomes out to dry the way a lot of those wide receivers are in Kansas City right now. Unfortunately, on 61 catchable passes the past two seasons, only one drop. I think you put him across from Rashee Rice. And honestly, they're similar type of wide receivers, him and Rashee Rice. Now, he's a little bit bigger, and Metro just a little bit longer, a little bigger wingspan. But they're both guys that can win as route runners, can win after the catch, can win in the red zone. It just gives you a nice 1-2 punch there going forward. Draft a guy in Adonai Mitchell. And number 26 overall here, Jacksonville Jaguars. This is one of my favorite fits of the draft. If he's on the board here, I think it's going to be the pick. Now, obviously, trying to figure out what Trent Baalke's going to do, usually a fool's errand. They may draft a fourth linebacker, with all the linebackers they have there in Jacksonville. But I have them going Terrion Arnold, the Alabama cornerback, specifically to go play the slot there in Jacksonville. The weak link there where they wanted Darius Williams to be that. He's not that. He's an outside corner. That's where he excelled at in Los Angeles. That's where he's excelling at now in Jacksonville. Terrion Arnold is a guy who's tailor-made for the slot. The physicality he plays with, the want to in the running game, it is all there. Now, he's maybe not he's not the man match guy on the outside that Kool-Aid McKinstry is. He doesn't have quite that frame even to do so. But he is quick, shifty, and physical. And can tackle. And that's a guy I want in the slot for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Really kind of one of the lone missing pieces there for that defense that's got a lot going for it. You put him in the box next to Foye Oluokun, Devin Lloyd. That's a trio that can cover a lot of ground. That's going to make things really difficult in the quick passing game there when you face the Jacksonville Jaguars. All right, number 27. Maybe my first off-the-wall call here of this entire mock draft, but I have it's specific again to the Dallas Cowboys. I have them going Payton Wilson, NC State linebacker. And it's because if you've watched this defense at all, you know that the front seven that they have there is the fastest front seven in the NFL. They absolutely fly around the football field. It is a pleasure to watch. And adding Payton Wilson, who at 6'4", 239 pounds, I've seen him track down wide receivers, I think 3 times on tape this year from behind at full speed. Wide receivers out in the open field, he hawks them. He is one of the fastest linebackers in the NFL. Would not surprise me if he runs in the 4.4s at that size. So you've got a guy who's 6'4", 238 pounds, running the 4.4s as an off-ball linebacker who can blitz, who can play sideline to sideline in the run game, and who barely misses any tackles. On 129 tackle attempts this season, he's missed only 6. Has the most stops of any player in college football this year. The guy's tape is out of this world. It's just multiple ACL tears, multiple shoulder injuries. He's a 6th-year player. That's why he's still there. But if you're the Dallas Cowboys, you want a guy who's going to make that impact right now. And he's a guy who can make that impact right now. Payton Wilson, you add him to that front seven, and it's good night as long as he's healthy there for you. All right, pick 28 here. Detroit Lions now on the clock. I have them going Texas nose tackle T'Vondre Sweat. 6'4", 362 pounds. If you watched him in the Big 12 championship over Oklahoma State, he caught a touchdown pass in that game. Having one of the most dominant nose tackle seasons that I've seen. It's right up there with guys like Vita Vea, right? Guys like Danny Shelton, who were first rounders. And now Danny Shelton probably doesn't go first round nowadays. But T'Vondre Sweat can actually impact the passing game. Like, he has unique movement skills, unique skill in his hands for a man that size. And he's a mammoth, dude. He's got a massive wingspan. Reminds me of kind of Linval Joseph from just a body type perspective, where he can just put one paw on you and he owns that block. So yeah, T'Vondre Sweat with the Detroit Lions, run defense still could get better, right? Ideally, Aleem McNeil's not your nose tackle. Ideally, he's your 3 technique. And then T'Vondre Sweat, drafting him allows you to make that happen. And yeah, they drafted Broderick Martin in the 3rd round last year. Broderick Martin's not going to stop me from drafting a guy like T'Vondre Sweat, who I, again, think is a high-end nose tackle prospect. And this is, again, I'm projecting what the Detroit Lions will do. And they obviously haven't quite cared too much about positional value towards top of the draft, shall we say. And before we get to the last 4 picks, today's podcast is brought to you by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the largest DFS platform in North America. The easiest and most exciting way to play DFS. It's just you against the numbers. Instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks, pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. Testing my skills on PrizePicks this football season has been the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. If you have the skills, you can turn $10 into $250 with just a few taps. Quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, and an enormous selection of players and stat types are what make PrizePicks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match of up to $100. That's prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and code LOCKEDONNFL for a first buzz match of up to $100. Daily fantasy sports made easy. Today's podcast is also brought to you by FanDuel. As the weather gets colder, the NFL offers stay hot on FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any $5 winning money line bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get on the action. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. And boy, was I hammering some money line on the Washington Huskies last Friday night. Liked the line at the beginning. Liked it anytime it moved in their favor. We had a good night. So visit FanDuel.com/LockedOnNFL. Kick off the NFL season. The final 4 picks in this mock draft. 5 picks. 4 picks. No, I was right the first time. San Francisco 49ers, pick 29. I have them going Jordan Morgan, offensive tackle from Arizona. A guy who fits the Shanahan scheme. He plays really well on the move. I love his balance. It's a position where the 49ers have skimped by kind of this year. They've gotten a little lucky when they have to pass and when it's, when they are doing true drop back, 5-step gun or 7-step under center. They still have issues in pass protection, but they mitigate them in the play action game. That can't always be the case. So when you get a guy like Jordan Morgan, I think he could be your right tackle, or even who knows how long Trent Williams has left in the tank, right? He's 35 years old. Is he going to be ageless like an Andrew Whitworth? Who knows? But Jordan Morgan, put him on the other side even, and I think you're upgrading at that spot over a guy like Colton McKivitz. So I'm a big fan of his game, honestly. I think he's a first-round offensive tackle. We'll see that guy down at the Senior Bowl. On to pick 30. Baltimore Ravens now on the clock. And this one, I have them going Cam Kinchens, safety from Miami. Now, they have 3 safeties on the roster as it stands. Geno Stone, Marcus Williams, Kyle Hamilton. They've shown that when all 3 are healthy, Kyle Hamilton kicks in the slot. 2 are healthy, Kyle Hamilton goes deep. But I think with how much they covet secondary and how much they have over the course of their GM tenure there for Eric Costa, I think he's too talented for them to pass up, similar to when they drafted, Kyle Hamilton and already had a couple starting safeties. I think this guy's too talented to pass up. You have Geno Stone hitting free agency, and he's a guy that Kinchens can do so much. He's one of the most multifaceted safety prospects I've scouted. Maybe not the most, but he is a true do-it-all type of safety. He can play in the box, he can play in the slot, he can play deep. He has those skill sets. Now, the inconsistency on tape, worrisome this past year, whether it was sometimes as a tackler, whether it was missed assignments on the back end. But from a pure ability perspective, this guy has the most of it in this draft class. And I think the Baltimore Ravens, with how well they've been able to develop players, this is a talent that I don't think you'd want to pass on developing if you are them and how you scheme up that defense. Just my take. On to the 31st overall pick, Miami Dolphins now on the clock with that 1 seed over in the AFC. I have them going Xavier Worthy, wide receiver from Texas, the fastest man in this draft class, probably. Just like the swiftest, right? There's maybe some other guys who have a top speed that's a little bit faster, but Xavier Worthy, just from the first step to the last, that guy has pure gas in the tank, man. He really is speed personified. He's 6'1", 172 pounds. A guy who, as a true freshman there at Texas, went for 981 yards and 12 scores. Now, that was his peak and from a pure production standpoint. This year, 969 yards, 5 touchdowns. Truly could have had more if they had a few more accurate deep balls there. But if you're the Miami Dolphins, Mike McDaniel, you don't want any foot off the gas pedal. We talked about how much Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill, how much they sub out in that offense. Because to keep them fresh, see when they're on the field, they need 110% because those guys at 110% are impossible to stop. Well, add Xavier Worthy to the mix, and when those guys are off the field, you still have that speed threat. Or if all 3 are on the football field, you have an absolute head-spinning amount of speed, the likes of which I don't think has ever been seen on an NFL football field for a wide receiving core. You don't think that's something Mike McDaniel is interested? I think that's something Mike McDaniel would be interested in. All right, last pick, final pick of this mock draft. Philadelphia Eagles. Again, this is based off of standings right now. Don't shoot the messenger. Go to themessenger.com to read the final picks of this mock draft. But I have been drafting Tyler Guyton, the Oklahoma tackle, one of the most physically impressive tackles in this draft class. At 6'7", 327 pounds. He is explosive as can be. Reminds me a lot of a guy like Jedrick Wills coming out of Alabama. Obviously got drafted by Cleveland Browns. Hasn't quite developed into an elite high-end pass protector, but still makes some ridiculous blocks that just like, one of one type of guys can do, just like those guys who are high-end freak athletes of the position. That's what Tyler Guyton is. I mean, just so explosive off the ball, really easy mover in space. Is he a complete tackle prospect just yet? No, I have questions about him pass protection. Hopefully we get to see him down in some one-on-ones at the Super Bowl, but we shall see about that. But he's a guy that the Philadelphia Eagles would like to develop because you have Mailata, Lane Johnson at this point. But you saw with Lane Johnson, when he goes out, when Jack Driscoll's in, it ain't the same. Driscoll's, maybe not a liability, but what they do is ask so much of that offensive line that you have to keep developing guys to keep it strong. It's a Howie Roseman special. And if he's on the board there, I think that's who they would pick. Well, there you have it. Picks 1 through 32. I'm so excited for the first round of this class because it's so good. And every year, I think I kind of have a handle. Maybe not every year I have a handle on where guys are going to go, but every year, there's a few guys in the NFL sees drastically different than I do. And so I'm very curious to find out who those are and who's going to be the risers. Then I'm just like, no effing way in heck do you put that guy up there in the first round? And then we'll see how their career turns out. But that's always the fun of it. So love this first round. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Listening to Renner Ranks, part of the Lockdown Podcast Network. And we will be back tomorrow with Austin Gale of The Ringer. Till then, take it easy.